Welcome, everyone, to our December MemLab Network webinar. Today, we have as our guest Amy Sloper from Wisconsin. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yes, Sloper from Wisconsin. And it's University of Wisconsin at Madison.
Yes.
Yes. And your title is?
Film Archivist.
Film Archivist. Okay, great. Awesome. And today, Amy's specifically going to talk about the Association of Moving Image Archivists Community Archiving Workshop, also known as CAW, because we have to have acronyms for everything. And so I'll just toss it off to you, Amy, and you can, talk about your place of work and EMEA and all that jazz, whatever you feel like it, and we'll come up with questions and have a discussion afterwards.
Great. So I'm going to share a slide deck, but I'm not going to be able to see the chat. So can you just read them to me if people have questions as we're going?
Yes, I will. Cool.
Okay. Okay, great. So thanks for having me today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Community Archiving Workshop and the types of things that we've been working on over the past 6 or 7 years, and especially the stuff we've been doing this year and into the next few years. So the Community Archiving Workshop, as Siobhan said, we started as part of the Association of Moving Image Archivists, or AMIA, and it's completely run by volunteers. And it was first started as a pre-conference workshop at the annual AMIA conference, which is in a different city every year. So basically, we saw it as a way to give back to the community and to share our expertise while we were in town. So what do we do at the workshops? Well, it plays a couple of roles. So first, it's a way for AMIA attendees to meet local archivists and collectors and community groups and share our expertise with them, and also for us to learn about local collections and local history. We try to help local organizations get better intellectual and physical control over their AV collections, with the intent to get them going on work with AV collections, since we know it's kind of an area that gets not ignored, but like overlooked a lot in a traditional archive. We also try to bring different groups within that community together to build awareness and interest in the community about local collections and audiovisual archiving. We also just try to have fun. It's a really fun way to network with the EMEA community too. Like you end up just like sitting next to people you've never met before and working together all day. So it's a really low-key way to network rather than having to go up to somebody at a reception and start an awkward conversation. So like I said, we started as a pre-conference workshop at EMEA every year. And now with the help of EMEA, mainly through financial support, we've been expanding outside of that model. So we're doing workshops outside of the EMEA conference, and we're doing things at other conferences and just within other local communities. And then you can see there's some images from some of our past workshops. So the history of the workshop, it was first organized by Mona Jimenez, who used to be the Associate Director of NYU's Moving Image Archive program. And she's pictured at the bottom right of the screen, digging through boxes of videotapes. In 2010, she organized a workshop with the Scribe Video Center in Philadelphia. And it was supported by the Independent Media and Diversity Committees of EMEA. And then every year we've continued to grow the workshop. So we started focusing on video, and then based on the expertise of the people in the group, we started branching out to film, And now we're working on born digital collections as well at the workshop. So basically any kind of AV you could find in a collection, we can handle it. And this year we worked specifically in Portland on an audio collection, and it was a local radio station called CAW. And I'll talk a little bit about that in one of the upcoming slides. So the CAW group, like I said, it's all volunteer run, and our membership is spread around the country and internationally as well, so you guys can relate. It's hard to schedule calls with all these time zones, but we make it work. And we come from a wide range of backgrounds and experience. We have people who are coming from a more traditional archives angle, working on paper collections, other people who are working at media centers, libraries. A few people are independent consultants, and a few of us have changed jobs multiple times as we've worked together. So it's a wide range of expertise, which helps a lot when we have to focus on different types of formats. We have basically someone who can answer any question. So here's a map showing where we've done workshops in the past. Most of the international workshops were organized through NYU, and that was through Mona Jimenez, and those came with separate funding through and from NYU. But the ones around the US are mostly were done as part of EMEA conferences. So you can see, like, and we've repeated a few cities now. We've done Portland twice. I think we've done Austin twice. But you can see there's big chunks of the country we haven't hit yet. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to try to combat that problem later. In 2017, we switched from the format that we had usually done, which was we would have one specific community partner and work on their specific collection in their space, to more of a fair format where we had one partner and then we invited like everyone from the community. Anyone who had a collection could come, and we had stations set up, and we would try to give advice to anyone who wanted to come. So that was something new, and I think it went really well. And we actually did that again in Portland this just about a month ago, or less than that, a few weeks ago. We had an AV fair at the conference hotel, so at the Hilton downtown. We did it on a Saturday. And in addition to working on the CAW audio collection, which you can see the bottom images, we set up a digitization station with the staff at CAW, so we were able to demonstrate digitization and actually do digitization for that collection, which was great. And the image in the lower center is of EMEA volunteers and CAW volunteers actually inventorying those collections before they got digitized. And then we had other stations set up around this conference room where we gave advice about film inspection, we gave advice about starting audiovisual inventories, like what kind of metadata to capture. We had a station about digital preservation and just giving advice. So people could come and just like with any type of question, and we would direct them to the right place. And you can see in the top left, there's images of the organizers. So you can tell we all had fun. We're really happy. And that was taken after the fair was done, so we were still happy, which is a good sign. So that's sort of the introduction to what the Community Archiving Workshop is and has been. And like I said, we're branching out a little bit with the help of EMEA. And that's something I want to spend a little bit of time talking about with you guys, is one specific example of how we've been branching out. So we did a community archiving workshop at the ATOM conference, the International Conference of Indigenous Archives, Libraries, and Museums, just this past October in Prior Lake, Minnesota. So that was an initiative that was funded by EMEA. So they sent us there. They sent 4 of us, I believe, there to the conference and paid for our registration and everything so we could go and host a workshop with that community, which was great. It was the first time any of us AMIA organizers had been to the ATOM conference. We sort of knew about it, but it was a whole new community for us to sort of introduce ourselves to and share our expertise with, so it was great. And for those of you who don't know about ATOM, it's an international nonprofit organization that maintains a network of support for various types of Indigenous programs, whether they be library, archives, cultural centers. They provide programming and services, they encourage collaboration, and they try to speak specifically to the Indigenous library, archives, and museums community, and give advice really catered to their needs. And this was their 11th annual conference. So we were all really excited about joining this project, and the ATOM organizers were also really excited about having us give a workshop. So let's talk a little bit about that workshop. So here are all of us who helped set it up. So Marie Lascu, Mariah Ulinskis, Kelly Hicks, and myself were there. We brought equipment. We brought, we worked closely with our partner in advance to get everything set up. Rachel Matson, who's based at the University of Minnesota Libraries, also drove down to help us out. And also Michael Pon, who's pictured in the lower left-hand corner from the National Museum of the American Indian, provided support throughout the day. And he also led a really great conversation after lunch about the challenges of preserving recordings in tribal libraries and archives and museums, especially recordings that maybe never should have been made in the first place. So anyway, it was super interesting. We had about 35 people from the conference help us out and process a collection that day, and a couple of walk-ins, people who had heard about it and wanted to see what we were up to. And it went really well. So our partner for the workshop was the Meidweganownid Library and Tribal Archives of the Red Lake Nation. And we had 2 staff members from that library come down. You can see them giving a presentation in this image, Jen Hart and James Cloud. So Jen is a library technician and James is an intern in the library right now. So they gave us an overview of like what the day-to-day issues and challenges and exciting things are in their library, and they specifically talked about their archives, which was really just like a room in the library when they first started. And they've done a lot to make that archival collection more accessible and also less accessible in some ways, because they had a lot of sacred objects that needed to be segregated and special access had to be required or requested in advance to look at that stuff. So they talked a lot about issues that they specifically had. And our initial contact with Red Lake came from the library director. Oh, I just want to show you where Red Lake is located. So pretty far away from where we were in Prior Lake. I think it was like a 4 or 5 hour drive for them to come down. And Jen and James were really gracious and helpful in that they packed up the collection materials that we were going to work on that day and drove them all down to the conference. So usually we don't have that happen. We're usually in the space of the library or archive that we're helping. But we were having a really hard time finding a local partner for the ATOM conference. So somebody based in like Prior Lake or Minneapolis. So we were really lucky that Jen and James were able to drive collection materials down to work with us. And I was saying our initial contact with Red Lake came from their library director, who's Cassie Leeport, and she is a UW-Madison iSchool grad, and she graduated in 2014. So I knew her. We overlapped a little bit. I started my job here in 2014. So that was another great connection that we were able to sustain. but Cassie wasn't able to come because she had a baby the week of the conference. So thankfully, Jen and James were great to work with as well, and they had been a part of all of our planning conversations. Okay, so at the workshop, which was 6 hours long, it was basically like a full day conference workshop. We always start in the morning of these workshops with sort of some presentations about best practices around the specific types of materials we're working with. So Kelly Hicks, one of our members, gave a presentation on handling VHS tapes, handling audio cassettes, and handling motion picture film, and like just some like really basic how to store it, what it's made out of, things to like pay attention to when you're inventorying. And then we go over the inventory process, which we do we split materials onto different tables, and we use a shared Excel sheet to do an inventory. And depending on where we are, sometimes we do it on a Google Doc, and we can all be on it at the same time. But it's really common that the internet is not very good where we're doing our workshops. So we also have a system for using shared Excel sheets. Well, they're not shared. We just have a bunch of Excel sheets on thumb drives. And at the end of the day, we just make sure they all get consolidated. That's one person's job to consolidate all of those. So like I said, we had about 35 people helping us that day, processing material, and we completed the inventory of everything that Jen and James brought down from Red Lake. So that was 140 audio cassettes, 46 VHS tapes, 3 half-inch open reel videotapes, and 7 reels of film. So it was really successful. They now have better intellectual control over their audiovisual materials in the archive. So they know what they have. They can prioritize things for digitization. We were also able to demo a VHS digitization setup for them. And a really cheap. We used a very reasonably priced analog to digital converter and a VCR that I brought with me from Madison, and just showed them how to set it up themselves, even though we didn't actually digitize any content that day. But it was a really successful workshop. We got a lot of requests from people that they wanted us to come to their community and do a workshop like this to help them get through their AV materials. Yeah, it was just really great. We felt like it was a very receptive community to this model, and there was even like within our attendees, there were people who were coming from specific regions. Like there were quite a few people who joined us from Northern California, from reservations in Northern California, and they were sort of talking about getting together and doing this kind of work amongst themselves, just helping each other out. We're also already talking about going back to ATOM next year, which is going to be in Southern California. So we're hoping to extend this model of traveling to other regional or other professional organizations to help other regions. Yeah, so I want to spend a little bit of time also talking about another initiative that we have right now, which is an IMLS-funded grant that we received to scale up our model of community archiving workshops, and particularly to train more people to run these types of workshops. So it's a training of the trainers grant, sponsored by EMEA and funded by IMLS. And again, you can see this is the map again where we've done these workshops in the past, and a map of where our membership is based. And you can see there's big parts of the country that we are not covering currently. So one thing we really wanted to do was try to figure out how to scale up our model and start thinking about how we can extend our reach. So we did some research. We had a focus group at EMEA a few years ago, and we really realized that a lot of the expertise of audiovisual archiving was centered around New York and LA. In New York, because of the NYU Moving Image Archiving and Preservation Program, and then in LA, and because of the media industries based there, and in LA as well, because of the training program that exists at UCLA, the Moving Image Archive Studies program, and then because of the film industry. So we wanted to figure out how to scale this up and to hit other parts of the country. So our original proposal was to work with libraries, community orgs, and independent media makers. And why did we want to focus on libraries? In particular, because they are often functioning as community archives, just by default. The library in Madison has a public history room that is basically a local archive, like the municipal archives in many ways. Lots of libraries, of course, are struggling to manage their unique and aging media collections, and those collections, as you all know, contain really important content and unique content. And we also wanted to partner with community orgs for a lot of the same reasons. They're under-resourced, they contain other important regional collections which are unique and don't have audiovisual expertise. And we also abide by this philosophy that we understand the philosophy that many small archives, and especially those that live in community organizations, the caretakers of those collections would rather keep them in their original home than gift them or transfer them to a larger university or a state archives or historical society, especially because they won't get the same kind of care and attention. So they could get stuck in a backlog for many years or be kind of forgotten about. So the way that this project is going to work is that we have 3 regional hubs, and they are based in Madison, Wisconsin, Nashville, Tennessee, and Oakland, California. So this is a start to a model we want to extend, where we are going to hold workshops that train people to be community archiving workshop trainers in each of these locations, and then have each of those people who are trained have 3 community archiving workshops in the region within a 2-year period. So there'll be some like classroom training to learn learn what you need to know about AV archiving to host one of these workshops, also how to find a good partner, how to communicate with your partner. So there's like some technical skills built in here, as well as some like communication and soft skills about how to work with partners. And let's see what's next. So we got this funding in 2018, and we're moving forward. So 12 workshops are going to take place between spring of 2019 and summer of 2020. 3 training of the trainers workshops and 9 community archiving workshops in 3 regions in the Midwest, the Southeast, and Northern California. Our anchors in each location: in California, we have California Revealed; in Wisconsin, Recollection Wisconsin; and in Nashville, the Nashville Metro Archives. So the anchors are sort of like the home base. That's where each of our mentors is placed. It's where the funding is getting funneled through. It's where we are creating kits that can be loaned out within the region, and the kits will live with each of our anchors. And those kits include things like hardware and software for digitizing video and audio, and they're in like Pelican cases so they can be shipped around the region. We also have what's called the CAW kit, the CAW kit, which is film inspection equipment. There's some film digitization equipment in there, which we're testing out. That may not be a permanent part of the kit. That's to be determined. Things like labels for tapes and films, some rehousing materials, stuff like that. Oh, the other thing is there's a digitization incentive built into this. So each of the anchors gets some money to digitize material that we just. So the partners working with us will basically get to start from the beginning. We'll start with a collection that needs to be inventoried. We'll do the inventory process, and that'll be part of the workshops. Then we'll have an Excel sheet that has an inventory of materials where we can prioritize materials based on the importance to the collection's owners, based on format issues, based on all sorts of factors. And then they'll actually get mentored through sending things to a lab and requesting specific file formats, and then what to do with the files when they get them back. And they have money for that first chunk of digitization, which is very exciting. So using Wisconsin as an example, or the Midwest region as an example, we can visualize how this is going to work. So Recollection, Wisconsin is our anchor site. So that's in Madison. And that's where we're going to have the training of the trainers workshop. And our first regional partner is in Milwaukee, and that's at the Milwaukee Public Museum. Our next regional partner is in Eau Claire, or it might technically be River Falls, but that's the Eau Claire region. Our partner is the Chippewa Valley Museum. And then in the northeast of the state, our partner in Green Bay is the Neville Public Museum. And not all of these partners have been 100% confirmed yet, but this is sort of the plan we're setting forward as we're in the early stages of putting this together. So staff from each one of these organizations will participate in the training in Madison. They will each also receive a subaward and a digitization incentive. And moving forward, they'll have the opportunity to borrow both the CAW kit and the digitization kit. And each one of these community partners will also have an opportunity to extend participation in their own CAW to members of their community. So if they know of other collections, like in the Green Bay area that could use some help, they can invite those specific partners to their own community archiving workshop, and maybe in theory, hopefully help them organize one in the subsequent years. So we're extending, hopefully even outside of the state a little bit. We'd love to get partners from the Twin Cities area involved, and maybe even in the Chicago area. And then you can see with with the three regions combined, sort of the reach we're starting to develop. So the goal, of course, would be then we do these three regions for 2 years, and then IMLS agrees to fund us again for another 2 years, and then we can pick 3 additional regions, which I think it's pretty clear that we have a big need in the western part of the state. You know, the Dakotas, Colorado, Texas. It would be great to start of filling in that map a little more. And then, of course, moving outside of the country would be great too. Okay, so just to wrap up, I'll give you some numbers of what we've done so far. So at our annual workshop, we serve, which is the one we usually have at EMEA, we are able to serve 1 region, serve 1 to 3 organizations or collections, train about 20 community volunteers, and process roughly 200 AV assets. And in the next 2 years, with our IMLS funding, we're hoping to serve 3 regions, 12 organizations and collections, train almost 200 volunteers on our methods, process 2,400 AV assets, and establish the community archiving workshop and digitization kits in 3 regions. So it's a big scale up, and we hope that it can continue. Every couple of years, we can just do a whole other set of these. And with EMEA's support, we can also do other one-off workshops around the country. Yeah, so that's all I have, and I'd love to answer questions. I will stop sharing this.
So, yeah, that's one of the, I find so much overlap with CAW and the MemLab network, and that's where I'm just like, let's just keep sharing all of our, you know, let alone the fact that we're all IMLS funded now.
Yeah.
And, you know, but, so we have, just to give you some more info, like for our first cohort, we had, who are joining us now, two partners from each library got sent to DC for a week, and they went through our boot camp. So in that, it was like very much like throwing them in and trying to teach them as much as possible about AV archiving and digital preservation, and then also like scanning of photographs and negatives, and how to take all like archiving skills to the public, you know, to teach that. It was very training the trainer oriented. Well, it was, yes, training the trainers that then they would go to their public libraries and teach and implement into their public libraries. And there, in particular, I really want to point out Kuruk's tribe in Northern California, which Barry is here on. Barry joined us. So, hi, Barry. And so she's at Kuruk, and maybe Elaine is with you as well. Elaine is there too. Great. So Elaine and Barry are there, and I just really want to push that, like, Elaine and Barry, they came to our boot camp. They got all this training. We still, like I already said to you, Amy, like, we've been so delayed in the purchasing of equipment aspect, but when they get the equipment and start putting things together, they'll have even more experience. And like, so I just feel like that's a region that you guys are already reaching out to, that please go visit like Elaine and Barry.
Yeah.
They're awesome. And then other places that we have, so Blake is here, and he's in Pueblo City County Public Library, which is Pueblo, Colorado. And then Matt is in Houston, Texas, and we have Erin's not here today. She's in Broward County, Florida. Like we mentioned, Mary is in Kentucky, which isn't like too far from Tennessee.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we don't have anybody from 3 hours from Nashville. Okay. All right. Great. So we have, lastly, we also have, I don't want to miss anyone, Mary, right, New Ulm, Minnesota,
yeah, right,
which is like 2 hours away from where you guys were. So that's the other thing, that like, please reach out to them too, because they actually have a TV station in their library.
No.
Local TV station. Yeah, it's like a public access, I think. And so like there's some broadcasting influence there that like reaching the media makers aspect could be a really neat tie-in. And then also I want to say, whoever's doing like the purchasing of equipment and stuff, please have them call me, because like I am so curious, and I also have like so many thoughts about things, like what would go in a mobile kit.
Yeah.
Because like for Kuruk Tribal Library, we're trying to make it as mobile as possible, because they have 2 locations that are 50 miles apart that they need to go take it regularly.
Yeah.
Back and forth, the memory lab. So I'm trying to just like, you know, I'm trying to keep what a memory lab is, and like, which I always say sort of is when you're thinking of a spectrum of best practices and worst practices, MemoryLab is like in the middle, you know, and also the spectrum is like cost too, right? So 3 locations. Oh my goodness. They need to take it to 3 locations. 3 locations along 120 miles of river.
Wow.
So yes, and lots of weather going on up there too. Like, but it looks
so
gorgeous.
The digitization kit. So I'm buying the stuff for the Midwest region, and we actually aren't buying digitization kits because they already exist. And Dorothea Sallow put them together through the UW, through the information school. And you should look at her website. They're called.
Is that the RAD?
Exactly, it's the RAD.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're very, like, yeah, they're meeting people where they are, basically, in terms of like that spectrum you're talking about. Like, we don't want to make the files so big that people can't deal with them. Like, it's all about just getting the data off the carrier, basically.
Right.
But yes, I was really happy to not have to put that kit together myself.
So yeah, I haven't looked at it recently, but I'm gonna have to look at it again with the thoughts of like where I'm at now in the project too.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, the main thing that keeps changing for me is like I have to keep changing. I mean, you know, I first looked at what we wanted to buy way back in like July and August. And I came up with a list and all this, and like now it's completely different. Even because we haven't bought, you know, it's just like things have stopped being manufactured. They're $300 more, $200 more, like, so I need to look at that. But I'm gonna write myself a note.
Yeah. And that was also an IMLS funded project.
Right.
So it's good that we are all talking to each other, even
exactly.
But yeah. And that's the other thing about the CAWs is they are so dependent on who our partner is. So we have to be really flexible in the way we think about our form.
Yes.
Kind of cataloging information are we going to capture? And like, we really try to we cater it to the host. So we can't get too tied to things. Yep.
And that is also very much the MemoryLab network, like making it as adaptable as possible, because each library system is so. I recently gave a talk in Mia, actually, even though I wasn't there, that I said every MemoryLab is like a snowflake. You know, they're all unique and beautiful. So it's just sort of like, but you have to be able to adapt to everybody's needs. So that's perfect. And I'm also very intrigued into what you guys learn from that film digitization, because that's something that like we're looking to maybe scale up eventually for MemoryLabs.
Yeah, it's one of these, it's like a thing you can buy on Amazon, a digitized.
The Wolverine?
It's the Wolverine. And I'm like, well, I've heard terrible things about these, but you can get a file off of it. You can make access copies. So maybe it's worth trying. Like, so
if it's not going to damage the film.
Exactly. As long as we can emphasize that, like, this doesn't mean you get rid of the film, but at least it gives the people a way to look at their material.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's safe, I'm like, let's do it. Yeah.
I'll let you know what I find.
Definitely. Awesome. So let's see. Does anyone else have any questions while I kind of gather my thoughts additionally to ask Amy some questions? Boop. I mean, I can go real straight into the technical of what AD converter did you use?
So the one that we demoed at the ATOM conference, I have the box right back here.
I can't see your video anymore. Is that weird?
Oh, okay. We did the ION video to PC HD converter.
Okay. Oh, there you are. Oh, no, you're gone.
No? Okay. Well, it's like that. This is the one.
But
it's like It's the one, if we get it on Amazon, it's like $40, I think.
Uh-huh.
Um,
And it worked?
it works, and it comes with software that gives you the option of making AVI files or
Mm-hmm.
or MP4 files. So that's the limitation, obviously, is it doesn't give you a lot of options. Um, and there's no like time-based converter or anything like that that we have hooked to it. It's really just like a VCR, a laptop, and this ion analog to digital converter.
Gotcha.
And we've used this. I've done other workshops at public libraries around the Madison area, and we've used this one as well. Um, the thing is, it's really most people who come to the public library workshops, at least, they just like take pictures of this converter and then go buy one and do it themselves, which
Yeah.
is really exciting for me. Like to see, for them to see that it is possible, and they don't have to have that financial burden of like sending everything to a lab where it's going to cost them thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like right now, my main issue is an affordable time-based corrector.
Yeah.
Is
Well, yeah.
like,
The one we
I,
had on our kit also, yeah, it's not available anymore. The one
I
we,
know, like as of like a month
I
ago.
know.
So I found another one that is sold not at B&H but at Adorama
Uh-huh.
Camera, and but it's like $500, whereas the other one was like $250 or something, right?
Yeah.
So that's not $40 on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that I mean it works. I've tested it. It works, and it does like S video input and output. So, but yeah, it's once again just that balancing act, and that's kind of like what the memory lab, you know, we want memory labs to be like to be able to have nice things, you know, like that's
Yeah.
kind of it's definitely not like super preservation, you know, like I said, preservation spectrum, but we also want the public to have access to that, but it has to be, I don't know how long this kind of stuff is gonna be available, and it's only through funding through IMLS that it's even possible, you know. So anyway, not really a question, more of a statement. So like, how can I have a call? How can you know? I feel like our partners today are probably gonna be like, well, that's nice. You're like, cool. I want one. You know.
Yeah.
So what can they do? Especially like they have, and I hope that they feel this way. They have a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge that they've gained already, and I really feel like they need to share it. Barry has, I got my I Heart IMLS button on. Oh, I want one. I need to get one. It's so true. So yeah, how could like, I know you guys are on a grant project and like, you know, you need to like check, but is there like some way that we could connect you guys, you know, and just be like, hey, keep us on the radar or whatever for future stuff?
Well, I think that our networks should certainly be linked up.
Yeah.
The Memory Lab networks on them too, you know, because that's a network that's being created, and we can then see what other parts of the country are getting this expertise or have it already. But I also, our website, so it's I guess I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but it's communityarchiving.org. And we have a ton of resources up there about how to host your own community archiving workshop.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you, for anyone who's done Home Movie Day before or knows about that model, like
they know about it.
Yeah, we're trying to make that model how the community archiving workshop runs. So we just present you with tons of resources, and then you just do it yourself. And if that means you might do it in a slightly different way, but we just want you to share your feedback and like your ideas with us. But use all of our materials and go for it. And ask us for help if we can help. But like all of our sample documentation is up on the website in the resources section. We have sort of a step-by-step process of how you would even begin and some timelines of like how soon you should start planning. And another thing that will come out of the IMLS funding is that we're going to create, this website will get more resources added to it. It'll get revamped, and there will also be curriculum modules added to it. So really like everything that we teach in the Train the Trainers workshops will be available on our website.
Awesome. Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm thinking, guys. Is like the main thing is about like all of it is the website URL is communityarchiving.org, right, Amy?
Yep.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is obviously the public libraries have their own collections where you could potentially invite the public in to teach them archiving skills that they can take home to their own personal archives. And that could be kind of part of those, you know, maybe it's like you have to take that intro class of, you know, knowing your clumps or whatever that we talked about, like, or clumping your collections. Sorry, knowing your clumps. That's weird. So basically then, you know, something where, oh, you guys get something because now this one collection is processed. And then you pass those skills down. They feel like they're doing a service. The art of clumping. Thank you, Matt. So, you know, that's one way to think of it. Or it could be a thing where people have already talked about this and I think maybe have done it once or twice. Thank you, Amy, for the link. Is of like doing the art of clumping or one of the personal archiving classes, and then having people maybe bring in a box of their own stuff, and then they work on it together. Or maybe you focus on another local community organization, and then, you know, but it's still like tied into the memory lab, because then you say, okay, now that you know what you have, you know, now that we've processed this and we've prioritized it using the knowledge that we have, now you can come in and use the memory lab sort of thing. So there's a huge tie-in to connect to the public here, where I feel like, you know, community archiving workshop calls are very much about spreading the AV archiving expertise to other archives and libraries and museums and things. But then also, I really think this is where the Memory Lab Network can come in and then get that training, which you guys have a lot of it already, but get the training specifically about workshops, and then take it to the public. My dog feels a lot of feels about that. She's very excited. So anyway, that's my thought.
The great thing about having librarians work on this is like you guys all know how to do event planning, and like some of the parts that don't come as naturally to the archivists who are used to sort of working by themselves and like doing stuff but not people. Like we have to train people how to like, and a lot of like communication type things and event planning type things, but librarians, like that's totally second nature to a lot of you already. So this isn't going to seem like anything that different for you, which is great.
Yeah, the main thing I think is the length of the event.
Yeah, right.
Like I feel like at one point I was like, and then I'll, you know, because working in a public library is new to me. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll teach like an hour-long class, and everyone was like, no, 30 minutes. Like, you know, got to keep it like consolidated. So I feel like, but if we're focusing on, you really can't get this work done without really, you know, you got to do the lecture and then do the hands-on stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes time. And that's the thing, a lot of AV is very time-based. So it's like real time. And that always managing people's expectations on that has been tough.
Yeah.
But like, I think focusing on it as a community service that is also, it's experiential learning, right? Like
Right.
you're through service to the community. I really feel like people, and I mean, you all know your community is better than I, way better. So that you also know maybe, you know, you that's the whole thing. Yeah, like Home Movie Day. You retool and rethink it and just kind of make it your own the way that it would actually really hit home for everyone there. Blake says, we definitely get a lot of disappointment when people hear the real-time part. Yep. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I did a digitization event this past weekend for home movies, and like, when I told, you know, we tried to explain to people, like, your 2-hour time slot, you will walk away with less than 2 hours of video. Like, so some people just didn't even get one tape done.
Mm-hmm.
But we're like, you know, that's part of the reason why it's so hard, but we can't let that bring us down and not do it. So.
Right. I find it's always like a good time. It brings up that idea of appraisal, which is something like it's like hard to communicate about unless you're sitting in front of like a box of 100 hours of video. It's like, okay, do you really want to spend 100 hours digitizing this, or do you want to take the time to like figure out what is the most important 3 hours of footage here? And like,
yeah.
So it's like, and that's something that we need to do with people. So even if that's something they learn, instead of leaving with digitized files or digitized video, like I think that's successful. Like getting people to think about that.
That's true. I mean, I think having an appraisal station as part of any memory lab could be a good good start. So, and just like sit there and watch stuff and figure out what you want. So let me see if I have any other questions. Anyone else have any other questions or experience with the sort of doing this kind of like community service, teaching, doing, you know, getting something done, but still teaching people? Where in Southern California is ATOM next year?
Oh, that's a good question. I just got an email about it. I know it's like north of San Diego.
Like Temecula?
Yeah, I think it's in Temecula, actually.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That jogged something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like an hour. Yeah, it's an hour in between like LA and San Diego. Is there a short hands-on exercise that you can suggest for teaching community members to archive? A shorthand exercise. Interesting. Or giving them a taste.
Yeah.
Well, how about for AV archiving, Amy?
I would think like just doing an inventory of a small set of stuff. So even like one box of VHS tapes, just like with 10 things in it, going through it together, and like really going slow, like having your inventory sheet open and going through that process. You could do it in an hour or less. You could do it in 30 minutes, actually. I know 30 minutes is the sweet spot, but like, what would you look for? Like, how do you touch and handle the material? How do you
identify?
Exactly. And then like sharing resources as you're doing it. So you could put together a box with like a few different formats in it, so people get a sense of like, oh, that's that size, here are the things that I look for on the object to identify it. And with video, I think that can be really enlightening to just go through a few different formats. And
it's just like the most popular ones.
Yeah.
That they'll find. Yeah. And probably, just showing them like, hey, here's a VHS, here's a VHS-C, here's it going into the adapter. Yeah. And then one thing, Blake says, one thing I comment on about the clumping collection stuff it's surprisingly hard to get people to actually bring stuff. Last time they did one of these classes, they had 7 people show up and only 2 brought anything. Wow. I guess, yeah, I would think that it'd be hard to like get them to stop and be
Right.
like, no, don't bring any more boxes inside.
Yeah.
That's interesting. 'Cause like, yeah, at this last weekend where we said you have a 2-hour time slot, I can't tell you how many people came with boxes, with a box full of tape, and I was like, we're gonna get maybe 1 tape done.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's yeah. I think maybe having a backup pretend box.
Yeah, like a teaching lot. We have like just 1 box with every video format in it here, and
Yes.
And we just like, so I just like collect things that are either blank, or I just sort of hold on to things that can go into the teaching lot.
I call it my traveling medicine show.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like in an old wheelie bag. Yeah, it's a mess. It's great. But definitely, I think that's. I do think that it's also like just depends on the community and like the branch. I also can see, for us, like different branches of DCPL would bring stuff and others wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a problem for home movie day too. Like some areas, like people will show up, but they just don't understand that they're supposed to be bringing their own films and videos. Like they are really interested in the idea, but don't realize no matter how you advertise it, that they're actually supposed to be providing the content.
Yeah, exactly. That their home movies are important. They're like, oh, but you don't want to watch mine. It's like, yes, we do. This is the point. It's actually really fun. Yeah. That's a very, very good point. So yeah, and that's where I'm like, I just think it would be super cool to partner with another organization,
Mm-hmm.
like or a local filmmaker, a local artist, local photographer, or something that just maybe you work that out beforehand and say we're going to focus on, Joe Schmo, this local artist who has all this, who has 3 boxes, and we're gonna try and get through the 3 boxes of slides and videos that they have. Maybe that's the best way to ensure that you have something.
Yeah, and then people know where to start at least when they get home. Like they leave with an Excel template that gives them a sense of like, oh, that's the kind of information that's important. So
do you have that online?
Yes, that should be online, and we always adapt those based on what the needs of the organization are. But yeah, if it's not up there, I need to make sure it gets put up there.
This also reminds me that I need to, so I recorded when we first started this whole thing. We use Slack a lot for communications between everyone, all the partners. And like, it's not super intuitive right away to understand all the ways you can use it. And I really wanted to learn actually. So I did like a little 20-minute, like, here's how to use Slack kind of thing. And I think I really want to do that for you guys. I need to record that about Excel, and like, just so that you can see why I am so crazy about the way I do my Excels. Like, I don't like having lines like without, I've noticed that people like to do that where they have the information and then they'll skip a line because they're like, and now I'm talking about something else. But then when you try to filter your information, that messes things up. And I know none of this is making sense right now, but it will once I record this thing. And also using like standardized vocab over and over in an Excel is so key to like being able to search the information later.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that this is something that can be entirely passed down to the public, but we need to try, like, because it really is. It makes your life easier. Like, it does. Trust me.
And like learning how to make drop downs, that like blew my mind, changed my life. Like the
filtering.
Yeah, like just so
Is that what
you
you mean?
so it like limits like
Yes,
what your options
exactly.
are in every
Yep.
field. Yeah,
But if you skip a line, you can't do that because it only searches like within that.
right.
Anyway, I'm going to do this. I'm writing in all capital letters. Do Excel thing.
Oh, you should share that really widely when you after you're done with
I
it.
will. Yeah, we're putting everything. Actually, did I do the Slack? I don't know if I put the Slack on the OSF, but I will. I will put that on there, and I will put the Slack on there too. Cool. Well, that's all the questions I have. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. Amy, thank you so much. This is great. And let's KIT for reals, very much
Yeah,
so, about all of this stuff. KIT about the kits.
yeah, for sure.
And everyone have a wonderful weekend.